Hello, everyone. Happy Sunday or Monday, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yes, happily. And thank you to all of you who are watching on YouTube and those of you who are hanging out with us live on Zoom. Thank you so much for being here and contributing to the conversation. You guys are wonderful at that, and it means a lot to us. And I know that we all learn from it. So, what are we learning about? What are we talking about?
Well, tonight we are coming to you from beautiful downtown 11th century Bukhara, and we are going to be talking about something that was first codified in this town 1,000 years ago, thereabouts. But this is going to be in contrast to a different methodology for dealing with what we're going to be talking about. And what we're going to be talking about is, in English, you can say ego death. The Arabic word for it is fana, Fana, or
Yeah, there's a number of ways, but
and
let's
there's a
just,
number of ways to spell it. We'll just go with that one.
yeah.
Uh,
And what does that, what does that mean?
well, it's usually translated as annihilation,
Mhm.
but it can have a couple, three different meanings. Where
Yeah.
is Osama? Osama,
Ah, you've been recruited
Yes, here I am.
looking stylish.
and
Thanks.
cozy.
Yeah, it's we got a lot of snow today. Fanat, yeah, annihilation. Um, Almost like non-existent.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Being snuffed out. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm. Thank you.
And the usual way of dealing with this concept is in tariqas all over the world is they talk about the four stages. And the four stages are usually they say fana fi sheikh, which means annihilation in your teacher, basically. Um, and once you achieve that, then you go on to Fanafi Pir, annihilation into the founder of your order, the great saint who your tradition comes from. And once you've got that, then you work on Fana fil Rasul, annihilation in the prophet. And then, if you're lucky, you get to Fana filah, annihilation in God.
Yeah.
And that's standard. And it's also problematic for a number of different reasons. And we'll touch on a few of those in the beginning of our talk. But first, before we get into that, don't we have a few
We always,
housekeeping things?
yeah, we always got to do the housekeeping, which is, of course, the stereotypical invitation with love, inviting you to subscribe to our channel if you enjoy the work that we
Uh,
do and you want to keep track of what we're up to. You
or
can,
you can annihilate yourself in the like button.
yes, yes, and then you can abide in the comments. You could leave us a comment and subsist there in the baka that follows your annihilation. So, with that said, though, if there are other ways you'd like to participate in our community and engage with our work, we have a number of links in our description. We have a Facebook group, we have an email list. I recommend joining either or both of those in these strange times where we never know what's going to happen with YouTube or Facebook for that matter. I think email is probably the safest. So we're leaning into that a bit these days. And of course, we have Instagram and yada yada. If you want to support our work, we got a couple links for that too. You could donate via PayPal or via Stripe, and if you want to support us regularly, you can do that through Coffee. And if you're a really cool person and you want to join the cult, you can buy a t-shirt and maybe even wear it on camera with us, like some of us weirdos do from time to time. So, There you go. I think, have I missed anything, Mushtaq? Oh, yeah, you could do one-on-one sessions with me or Mushtaq, or two-on-one
Yeah,
sessions.
and
Found
that's
links for those too.
yeah, that's one of the two areas where the real meat of the matter happens.
Yes, yes. So we can do all our talking here. We can get the consensus here. But if you want boots on the ground work done within yourself with help, that's how you get it. And that allows us to be of service in a way that supports us as well. So thanks for listening to our spiel. And with that, let's talk about annihilation, these four different kinds.
Yeah. So there's a problem with the standard pattern of annihilation that I just touched on. And that problem is that it opens the student to serious transference. You all know what transference is in the sense of the psychological of projecting your own inner stuff onto your therapist and or teacher and acting as if it's real and doing all sorts of crazy stuff around that. Um, and this is something that people need to understand that tarika, tasawwuf, is not psychotherapy.
So the path,
The
being a
path is not
Sufi,
psychotherapy.
any spiritual path, really.
Yeah. Well,
I
depends
guess
on what you think of as a spiritual path. There's some of them that are obviously made just for children. I won't
Zing.
name any.
Yeah. But as
But
far as we're concerned,
as far as we're concerned, the tarika is for adults. Adults don't need to deal with transference. They've already dealt with that in their lives.
or they catch it
Yeah.
when it starts.
And not every teacher is ethical enough to deal with the transference from a student. Think about that. We've all seen, I have lost count of the number of times that uh, I have seen, oh, this teacher got involved with a student or students, and it's all scary and bad things have happened. And that happens when uh, the teacher either doesn't understand that this is not psychotherapy, or they don't have their ethics in. So this is why we screen students very, very carefully. You know, we do this, right? And this is open to virtually anybody who is not an asshole. And we love everybody who comes here. Not everybody who comes here is in our specifically Sufi group, not because, well, because of any number of reasons, but one of the reasons that people don't get to join the inner group is that they aren't ready for it. And the reason, one of the reasons, it's not just that they have not matured enough uh, in every case, but in some cases, they have not matured enough to do it. And if we didn't do that, we would be constantly dealing with mommy and daddy issues. I would be getting all of, I mean, we get this here, right? There are people who project their daddy issues onto me and people who project their mommy issues onto Noor. And we've yet to have that reversed, but I'm sure it will happen at some point. And so they fall in love with Noor and they hate me because they think that I'm the authority figure. And that is toxic to the work. It's toxic for them if they're allowed to follow that.
If we don't check that,
Yeah.
I mean, it's our responsibility to check that.
And some teachers don't realize that it's their responsibility to check it because sometimes it feels really good. You know, you get even the greatest of teachers can be uh, seduced by worship. So in our particular tradition, the wise people who created this tradition made sure that that was not allowed, that that could not happen. And so there is no cult of personality that can be formed from our work if it is followed as taught. Does that make sense? Why we stay away from that? Why we don't look for people to do fana fi sheikh with Noor? And you could hear a pin drop. Boing.
Yes,
Yes.
James.
Any mature, sensible human being would avoid that kind of cultic situation because it never ends well for anyone. And that's been demonstrated time and time and time and time again. It's not just the worshiping disciple that's going to get in trouble. The the teacher who allows and encourages projection or isn't aware of it, it always comes back to bite them eventually.
Oh, yeah. We have seen many a teacher um, ruining their lives through that.
Hmm.
As, not just in external circumstances either. I think by allowing and encouraging that, they reinforce their own infantile capacities, their own
Yeah,
self-delusions. Even if they
exactly right.
get away with it, they're
Well,
still damaging
yeah,
themselves.
reinforcing is a very good word. It's
Mm.
like a feel good reward for all of those quirks that cause us to develop unhealthy dependencies on one another and project our imaginings about who and what they are for us. Yeah. I mean, that's why we're so insistent on, continuing as we as teachers, I'll speak for myself. I know the work never ends because I always have to be sensitive to that. And my sensitivity can grow over time as long as I'm practicing an awareness that I am vulnerable to interesting dynamics with people who may come into my life as students, perhaps potential students. And so the responsibility for that never ceases. But because we want to work with adults, that means that the people who are allowed to, or that we invite in, or that we build relationships with, they have to be in a position of being able to do that for themselves as well.
So RM asks uh,
Yeah.
a good
Yeah.
question here.
Well, James says in
Yeah.
relation to this, as long as you have this nervous system, you generate a quote unquote shadow. So, yes, the work with a capital W never ends. Thank you, James. RM says, why is it necessary to have fana in a shake?
And the answer is it's obviously not necessary. But if that's all you got, that's what you do. And fana in a sheikh literally means that you let your personality your ego be subsumed in them. Subsumed, is that a word?
Subsumed. I think it's subsumed that you're looking for.
Subsumed,
Which is
whatever it
like,
is, that word
yeah.
that I cannot pronounce. Don't do that. Um, and the idea is, if your sheikh is a insan al kamil, then
Perfected human being.
yeah, then you're letting yourself be annihilated in him or her, means that there is nothing sticky in the sheikh that can you can adhere to. Unfortunately, that is almost never the case. I've met a lot of holy people in my time, and not a single one of them didn't have something sticky in them. And sometimes you have to wait to see it. And sometimes you first see it reflected in their students. But never, not never, never, ever have I seen a single person who didn't have something sticky in them for a student's shit to adhere to.
Yeah, it crossed my mind today reflecting on the hagiographies of saints and all that. You should be reading that fact into those hagiographies as well.
Yeah. And so what we're saying here is basically kind of heretical. I can hear them massing up outside our door now. I can see the torches being lit. But you know what? They'll never get us.
Our specialty. Thank you, Ian.
So, what can you do instead? What is a way to approach this that does not demand being lost in the personality of another? Let me tell you, because if you knew, you wouldn't have had to come here tonight.
Or we'll just remind you.
Or we'll just remind you. Now, we're going to make a distinction here. It's the difference between in Arabic fi and al. So I say fana fi sheikh, and I translate that as annihilation in the sheikh. But if I say fana al sheikh, it means something different. And again, I am going to call on Osama, who is our living Arabic encyclopedia. Can you explain the distinction between those two prefixes?
yeah, fana fil sheikh, as you said, annihilation in the sheikh or in the peer or in the prophet, whatnot. Fana al sheikh is annihilation of the sheikh.
Yes.
Hmm.
Sort of like when you meet the Buddha on the road.
Right.
Ah, yes. So it's
So,
almost like traveling through, huh?
yeah.
Like annihilation in and then of, and getting out the other side and moving on to the next iteration of expansion or whatever, however we want to phrase this. Yes.
So we use 4 stages as well. And the first stage is known as Fana al Akam. Excuse me, Akam. And this is literally annihilation of your love of the world. And it is specifically alam means world, al ajsam, which is the world of the body, the world of bodies. And we say that the visible world can support the body, but it cannot supply a proof of an ego. And what ceases in this is, they say this is not a true fana. Um, I have no opinion on that. But what ceases is your hope that the outer world can stabilize the eye. And what ceases is the appetite to remain fully in the dream, as if it were your real home.
So
And yes, Nor?
I was just going to say we have a question from Khalil.
Yes.
Khalil's asking, wouldn't it be better to say fana al dunya instead of fana al alam?
It's akam.
Aham, yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'm not sure. There again, Osama, can you translate akam for us?
Well,
Uh, yeah, that's why I wrote that in the chat. Ahkam, rather than alam. Um, rules, um,
oh yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
rules is
laws.
like the
There is a process like that, but it's different from this particular one. I know what you're talking about, Khalil, which is like the mm, it's a longer set of stages, and it involves kind of the deconstruction of our relationships to, yeah, the material world, to concepts, to, how we relate to other beings in the world, all of that stuff. So you're not wrong, but that's a different set of.
yeah. And if you
Wait, I'm
say,
confused. Were you talking to me or were you talking to
Oh, I
Khalil?
was talking to Khalil on that.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, I think this is just misunderstanding. I think he thought it was Fana al-Alam.
yeah.
Um,
You had a thought, Khalil?
I just wonder then what's the root of ahkam? Is it from hakama, like from wisdom? What is yeah? So it's a derivative of wisdom. Like what does it mean literally? Ahkam.
Literally, it means rules.
Okay. So
That's one of
kind of
the
like the law,
translations.
maybe like disappearance or annulment of the law. Would that be a good?
No, no, not quite.
Not
It's
quite.
the inner rules that you carry
Uh-huh.
uh, that uh, create your being stuck in the world.
So maybe programming.
Yeah, we've talked
Programming is a good
about,
word. Yeah,
remember the discussion we had a while back about heuristics and getting super attached to them and then being ruled by them, basically. So we can think about it from that way. Okay. RM asks, can we define this type of fana as the fana of conditioning? Like,
sort
yeah,
of. Yeah, that's not bad. It's not all of it, but it's a good chunk of it. Think of all of the rules. So, constraints upon the model. All of us have constraints on our being. Our first constraint is biological. We can only hear, we can only hear in certain frequencies. We can only see in certain frequencies. We can only feel in certain ways. The the body has its limitations and we are stuck with them. We can never see into the ultraviolet or the infrared without machines to translate it for us. We don't ever get that direct experience. So, biological constraints. We have cultural constraints. Every culture has its rules, spoken and unspoken, and you violate them at your peril. If we were living in ancient Egypt, you might end up having to marry your sister or your brother. If you do that here, people look at you really funny, and sometimes they throw you in jails or mental institutions. If you live in certain parts of the world, not just Muslim parts, but certain parts of the world, you might end up with multiple wives. If you do that here, they can arrest you.
Halil mentions that the fana conditioning is similar to how J. Krishnamurti describes it, and continues to say, these quote unquote rules strike me as being very similar to the quote unquote laws of the different cosmos in Gurdjieff's system. For example, we live in world uh yeah, I think it's
96.
96, which is subject to, I think he says, 48 laws.
Yeah, 96 is subject to 96 laws. World 48 is subject to 48 laws. That's the whole meaning of the numbers.
But in principle,
But
yeah,
yeah, you got it right.
yeah.
Uh, and you're a philosopher, not a mathematician. So don't worry about it. Um, but as far as that goes, it's true, but there's more. You are subject to family rules and often extended family.
Yeah.
So rules that are idiosyncratic to your upbringing, to your extended family. Uh, if you are a Southern white boy in Alabama and you take a black girl to the prom, uh, people might look, your family might be upset. I have a friend who's a black guy. He got married to a white girl. And I was talking years later to her father, and he was telling me about how he had gotten in his car with his shotgun and was going to go down and find this guy and kill him for doing this. Fortunately, he came to his senses, and years later, he was perfectly happy with the situation. But that's family rules.
Yep.
And then you have your personal rules, the rules that you have made up from your own conditioning.
I never do this. I always do that.
Yeah. Or everybody hates me because of X. Everybody loves me because of X. Or whatever it is that you got that you made up on your own self without the help of others necessarily. Abstractions that you've created through your own personal experience, whether they are connected to reality or not. So all of these things are the akam, the rules by which you live, by which you maintain your sleep specifically.
Hmm. Um, yeah, that's what they're good for, huh?
Yeah,
They help you maintain the sleep. All right. So, yes, Ian.
Yeah, it just occurred to me that there's also cultural rules.
yeah, I
Yes.
mentioned those.
But yes,
I
absolutely.
must have missed that then.
Yeah, I might have whispered them.
Yeah, I mean, the specific example I was thinking is that because I was brought up in Britain, there's all kinds of things associated with being British
Yes.
that are very different from being American.
Yeah, sounds about right. Thanks, Ian.
And
Um,
two countries separated by a single language. Of course, y'all talk funny over there. And RM is asking
yeah,
things.
RM says, can someone stuck in Fana of the rules for life? One sec, let me just read through. Can someone be stuck in the Fana of rules
It's not
for
this, it's
one's
not being stuck
lifespan?
in the fana of rules. It being stuck in the rules.
Hmm.
You can be stuck in the rules for your entire life, for sure. That's
The
easy. Most people do it.
the Fana is getting out of this.
Yeah, the fana is that moment when you go, oh my God, I'm stuck in these rules and I don't want to be. That's why it's not considered a true full fana because uh, it is to the coming to the realization that your life is mechanical.
So here's how I'm reading her thought now. Once you've accomplished that breakthrough, can you get stuck there forever? Like, can that be as far as you
Yeah.
go?
Yeah, you can get stuck
Yes.
there forever. You got to go through all four of them, and you got to go through them in this particular order. You cannot do them out of order, as much as some
Yes.
people think that that might be the case.
So her real question is, how do I grow out of that fana and
We're getting
level
to
up?
that.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to work on this, there's two things that you can do. One is to repeatedly check throughout the day. Am I awake or am I asleep right now? And then notice, where am I trying to get my I, my me, from outside? How am I constituting my ego from the outside stimuli? And that gets us to the second stage. Fana al-afal, we call it. Uh, and that is in the alam al-arwah, the inner world, the world of dreams, the trance, the spirits, the images, the voices, the ghost world. And when you confront this, um, Osama, forgive me, but I'm going to ask you to translate af'al for us.
Actions.
Actions. Yes.
Yep.
Annihilation of actions.
We're doing with
Yeah.
actions, yes.
Right now, we have, uh, us normal folks have identification with automatic doing, our reactivity, our self-narration, identity maintenance in all of its uh, different uh, methodologies. And we have a belief, some of us, that our inner experiences, visions, bliss, hal, are automatically real or spiritual. And when we work on this, when we have achieved this fana, we realize, first of all, that our actions are not ours. The horror of this is Gurdjieff's horror of the situation, is when we realize that our life is entirely mechanical and we have no free will and we are just a stimulus response meat machine.
Seek pleasure, avoid pain.
Yeah.
Hit button, get a slap or a cookie. Who even knows?
And the key insight to this, when you start freeing yourself, it is through the realization that the world of spirits is what you're living in now. We live in a dream state with rare moments of lucidity. And the dream state is entirely reactionary. It just happens to us. And I've talked a bunch about lucid waking in the
Mm.
past. Um, and these are the flashes in this world of awakening within the dream. And once you see your habitual circuits, your your inner entities, you can't unsee them. This is where you get people who get on a spiritual path and literally become junkies because they can't deal with truth realization and they have to anesthetize themselves sometime. But you can't not see this once you've seen it. And so it requires heavy medication.
Yeah, I feel like this is also where people who do internal family systems type therapy and stuff, this is where they feel into that, they do that work to kind of pick apart, okay, what is really me and what is part of these mechanisms inside me that are all moving together towards survival, pain, avoidance, pleasure. And you can get stuck here because suddenly now you're identifying with all of these circuits inside of you that you've discovered.
Yeah. And so how do you get out of this? How do you achieve this fana? The easiest way is doing the present moment dhikr. We've taught this a number of times. I'll drop a link at the end of this where we go through it in detail. That will initiate this fana in you if you practice it.
I'm going to take note of that, the
Yeah.
present moment zikr.
Basically, you wake up, you return to the awake state, notice that you were asleep, fall back asleep, wake up again. You keep doing that until the waking becomes longer than the sleeping.
And it does if you stick with it. You
Yeah.
can have confidence in that. Any questions on this one? Any questions so far? Or thoughts that are coming up for you guys? Yes, Osama.
Yeah, there is this feeling of uh, complicating things. I don't know, because I know we've talked about this couple of times, and then we talked about it in a different way. Um, there is the parallel of Sharia, the law, tariqa, the inner way or the path, haqiqa, the truth, and ma'rifah, gnosis. right? Always these four stages, or فناء في الأفعال, in the actions, فناء في الصفات, in the attributes, فناء في الأسماء, in the names, and فناء في الله. So it's all, there's so many different angles. There's kind of these four stages that we're coming at it. Um, and I wonder if the way that an individual sees the stages conceptually, intellectually, um, changes something within the work, or regardless of the system or regardless of the structure, the work itself is the same.
I think the latter is most accurate. I think that what we're trying to do, this is the blind man and the elephant in a certain sense. We're all feeling this and talking about what we feel. The whole is greater than this. And we've talked about this in several different ways in the past. And um, we keep trying to find a way to describe it because the truth of it is simple. The truth of this is not complex. Our way of talking about it is more or less complex. And we present it in the hopes that people will be inspired in some way or another to try this out for a fit, to see if it looks good on them.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And another thing that I hope that we get to, because I know in the email there was different language also used, so
Yeah.
hopefully we can touch on that later.
Yeah, we struggle with language because this is beneath language. This is primal to language. So we will touch on that. Um, let us take a look at the third stage, fana fi sifat, which is annihilation of the attributes. And this is where the rubber meets the road. Uh, this is your entry into the real world, the alam al-imkan. Uh, and this means beyond trance, beyond the mind, something real becomes possible. Free acts of will. This is where you begin to develop your own free will. Uh, the belief that your current qualities, your virtues, your flaws, your spirituality are solid and belong to you begin to disappear. And compulsion as your default mode begins to disappear. And the insight that you get is that alam al-imkan uh, is the world where real choice exists, the realm where you can actually have will. Actions are not driven by your sleep. And those who reach this cannot transmit it in words, yet you can sense real being in it. And even though the most perfect teacher still retains the flaws of humanity, you can sense the real being in them. And that real being becomes their default state. And the signs of this are a capacity to act without self-performance, less compulsion, less story, more simple, accurate presence. And other people will feel steadied by your presence without you having to try. And the practice for this state is very simple. You just maintain your basic awake state. And it gets you into where you can actually be of service to the world without it affecting your self-image, without the reward.
Like we were talking about at the very beginning.
And that gets us to the fourth stage. Once we get through that, we can get back to what Osama was talking about. The fourth stage is fana al-zat, which is literally annihilation of the essence. This is complete liberation. Divine love takes possession. The soul is taken by the real. I like that. This is the point where, as one of my first teachers described it, God takes a look at you and goes, you know what? You don't need that essence. That essence it's got scrapes on it. It's the paint job is messed up. It's got dents. The rubber is bald. So here, let me take that away from you. And God annihilates your essence. This is what fana is basically the same thing. Annihilation in the divine being.
Yeah, we could think of it as like the annihilation of lowercase e essence.
Yeah.
Annihilation in capital E
Yeah.
essence.
And my teacher said, so Allah takes your ego, he annihilates it. But because you can't live without an ego on this plane of reality, he gives you a new one. And the ego that he gives you is a mirror of his own. And it does not have all of the dents and scratches and bad upholstery and all of this other stuff. Brand new. So and there is this realization that your small I selfhood um, ceases, and that you are, this is where the concept of baka, which is subsistence, where you exist within the divine reality and because of the divine reality, and you are nothing more than a mirror for it. There is no one walking the path anymore because the path no longer exists. And this is not becoming great. This is literally the ego's end. Yeah, and love is not possessed by your being. Your being becomes possessed by divine love. You can't even talk about this stuff really. So we have four thoughts. The outer world can't give the ego what it wants. The inner world can't give the ego what it wants. But something real becomes possible. And the separation of the microcosm and the macrocosm ends.
Are you up for a question from Khalil?
Yes.
Khalil is well, we also have some from RM. We can
Yeah.
hold those because this one is relevant to our this fourth fana. Khalil asks or mentions, it sounds like the Sufis are using quote unquote essence or zat uh in a different way from how Mr. Gurdjieff uses it in his essence slash personality distinction.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, so we have to be careful about when we use these
Yeah, I'd like to avoid using essence as much as possible because everybody
for
has a
this reason.
different, yeah,
Yeah,
everybody has a different meaning for it.
yeah.
And some would say there is no essence. Essence is an illusion. And they wouldn't be wrong, nor are they right.
Is that helpful at all or relevant?
If it's
Really?
helpful, you're a better man than I am.
Um, so RM asks, do you think, okay, do you think intention has something to do with this, especially when there is risk of getting stuck in dreaming of the awake state? I mean, intention to get to know Allah in this state does not matter because that's not the goal.
If you have intention to know Allah, you will never get there because you've already created a separation. You have created a partner to Allah just by going, I want to know Allah. Because then you have I and Allah. And it's not that.
James says, for a while now, my working hypothesis has been that wakefulness initially allows real personal essence to replace personality, allowing you to act with greater internal congruence and less biased external perception. So you're not just an ascetic renunciate, and you don't have to. So you're not just an ascetic renunciate, and you don't have to be, because action is now congruent with personal essence. That
And that's
what
a great model as long
yeah.
as you realize that it's a model.
Incongruence sabotages fully embodied wakefulness. I mean, yeah, I would agree with that. What you're saying now challenges the finality of that, or at least changes my favorite context for it. Interesting, James.
Yeah. But good. We want to challenge that.
Any other thoughts or questions right now so far? Omar, you've been diving deep into a lot of Buddhist thought and practice over the past few years. What's coming up for you?
Well, it's coming. I'm afraid of forgetting. Just sleep. There's a lot of words, a lot of models, a lot of concepts. I guess what I'd be interested in hearing is, you know, you and the Mushtaq. I mean, what have you experienced in the way of these states? What's the actual? Can you point to the actual experiences that you've had and give us a flavor of that at least. Obviously you can't transmit those necessarily, but you know, but I'd be interested in some what these theories, what these models are pointing at, and
Mm.
some example of that, really.
Well, I feel like I should take my slippers off, my sandals off, and put them on my head and walk out of the room.
That would be a start. I mean,
I mean, it's a
but no,
fair,
I mean, I
fair.
don't have anything to add other than that. I mean, I'm probably more allergic than most to models and theories and so forth because I've been, obviously much of my life has been steeped in that, and I'm almost leery of getting involved in more modeling and more concepts and more stuff like that. And what I'm really interested in is people's actual lived experiences in these matters.
Yeah.
Uh, what is it that's being modeled?
Yeah,
Demonstrate that. That's what I would love to
Yeah.
see.
And to demonstrate that,
all of that. That's valid.
that's that's chop water, carry wood.
I know, I know.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, put the slippers on your head. That's fine. I mean, I
Yeah.
I would get that, but
Yeah.
uh, but I don't have. So basically, that's my way of saying I don't have anything to add to this. It's not an area that
Yeah.
I'm
But it's an
deep
interesting
in.
problem because I think about how could I answer your question from my own experience? And my experience is there aren't words.
I mean,
Right, but there are words that can kind of roast the flavor of the experience,
And
maybe,
that's what we've been
or
doing all night is giving you
yeah,
words that
okay,
give you
right,
the flavor of the experience.
yeah. And I guess for me they weren't doing that, So, but then again, that may be just because I didn't sleep well last night, So
That's
I,
easy
yeah,
too.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
not all words affect everybody.
mhm.
yeah,
And sometimes not at different times. The same thing that moves us one day may feel like
yeah.
just more hokey bullshit the next day. So it
So
can,
okay, so there are certain experiences, um, in the Zen they're called kensho, for example,
mhm.
which are kind of temporary droppings of identification with particular ideas of myself. Uh, and sometimes they seem like they, okay, and here again, the words fail. Like they open up a space that is a non-personal space. And yet the personal viewpoint, I mean, the physical viewpoint still, I mean, I can still see the house and the room I'm in and stuff like that. That doesn't disappear, but there's this sense of an, im an impersonal, a non-personal space, which includes you and Noor and everybody and is somehow more, I guess, more real than my usual interactions with people. And that sounds like one of the things that you're talking about. But I wouldn't be able to tell you which of the various layers that is, or anything of that sort. Uh, but that would be the closest thing I would have to this point to from the tradition that I'm probably more involved with, is these this clarity. It's not just a conceptual clarity, it's a clarity of perception almost. And it's a clarity within which, if you were to ask me, hey, what's the difference between you and I could spontaneously say that there isn't any. It's just, I mean, in one sense, we're just one, with different viewpoints. Now that can be and has been a very profound experience. It's not the end of the line because then it's a question of embodying that in everyday life. But so it's not the but it's the closest thing I can come up with that seems to resonate with the kind of stuff that you're talking about here. And but I don't know how to fit that into your model.
Yeah.
And so
Kitty.
That's
Um,
basically all I can do, you know.
you know what? As I listen to you, I see that's kind of there's a multifaceted aspect to that, you know, like some of the first experiences we might have, unless we're totally getting our minds blown, like Mushtaq did when he was a little kid and was suddenly, you know, being one with the universe for just out of the blue one day. But we get snippets, we get little flashes of the awareness that you're talking about. And then over time, we're able to sustain them or call them up with more intentionality.
And how in this model that you're presenting,
Yeah.
how does that account for those flashes? Is it I mean, I think of it often as, oh, not often. I think of it sometimes as uh, a disidentification with a particular uh, model that I have of myself or of
Yeah,
others and so forth. You know,
definitely.
but it's not a conceptual disidentification. It's a, you know, it's well, I mean, it's part of its conception, but it's kind of like a stepping out of um, a mask almost, a stepping
Yeah.
out
Well,
of a particular beingness.
that's why one of the common words used for this is detachment, right? It's not,
Detachment, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, release, oh, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
But it doesn't. Well, okay, you know, it doesn't put one into any kind of a woo-woo space. I mean,
No.
it's very, very real and very, very concrete, you know. And again, I have no idea what. Well, I have some idea, but, but I don't claim this to be in any way, you know, uh, yeah,
Well,
something that is.
for what it's worth, Ilmar, I've seen people nodding as you're talking, meaning they relate to the things that you're describing. So even if they might use totally different words to describe that experience, there is something of the taste of the thing
Right, right.
that many of us will recognize.
Yeah. And I guess it's that taste that I would. I mean, sometimes it seems to me as well, maybe only poetry is the way to do that.
It helps.
Is to transmit that taste. You know, I mean, that's something why I love Rumi. I mean, you know, he does transmit some of that. You know, and whereas most of my philosophy profs have not. You know, and it's just, you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you for sharing, Omar.
yeah,
And
sure,
I think this gives us, it gives me food for thought for sure in terms of, you know, I don't think it's always worthwhile to tell people what the thing feels like. You kind of have to, as Mushtaq said, you know, not everything is going to hit the mark for everybody because it's
sure,
kind of like a seduction into the experience in a way.
yeah, yeah, it is, and
And it's just one of those things.
yeah,
So,
there's no way to tell that anyway. That's you can
exactly.
point to it, you can, you know, evoke it maybe, but you can't really
Yeah.
do it justice by description. So yeah,
So Eminem has been waiting patiently because I think she has some some thoughts perhaps related to this. Please feel
It, it might, sorry, I'm a bit out of breath. I had to run up and give Mr. Mutt some food. He's been scratching at my seat. I think what I'm going to say might answer a little bit for you, Ilmar. Speaking from my own experience, for me, how I understand these stages or these stations is the doership for me. For instance, I do this, I do that, or I can't do that and I won't do that. The ownership of the doing falls off or starts to dissolve with the FL, for instance, starts to dissolve where you start seeing that it's not you that's actually doing somehow. And this is where you lose words because how do you explain that? It's happening in your hands, for instance, or through you, but you can start to feel and see and sense that you're not the doer actually. Something's being done through you. And when you start to accept this, start accepting it without having to justify it or rationalize it or have control over it, you literally start to accept this, then that ownership of the doing starts to dissolve. And then obviously there's the next station where about reaching an objective or a goal, an outcome, for results, seeking the results. You start recognizing that the I cause the result or I cause the outcome. That outcome is not necessarily in your hand, and the acceptance of that starts to rise in the fana, in annihilating your sense of making outcomes happen. So you let go, and that starts to slowly dissolve. And in these layers of dissolvement, there's that rules should obey me, or I'm against all rules, or why me? I've done A, B, and C. Why didn't I reach D? Like, why me? These kind of things are from the ahkam, where all the rules and regulations are, and you follow systems. So the systems start shifting, and you realize things aren't the way they seem or the way that I thought they are. And you start releasing the grip on that as well. And that starts dissolving in your sense of self. And then the qualities like I'm smart, I'm not smart, or I can, I'm the qualities of being this or being that. And all of these things can be in the positive or the negative, because the ego can take a positive dress or a negative dress for its sense of existence. So the qualities you start to realize, I'm seeing, but I'm not really the seer. I've got intelligence, but intelligent isn't me really, right? Because if I can make sense of this thing here, why can't I make sense of this one? So you start realizing that in your everyday, with everyday things, that those qualities aren't yours either. Those skills aren't yours either. So the sifat, the qualities start to kind of shift out, or your grip on them starts to shift away. And then the slowly arises the understanding of that, or I exist too kind of grip loosens up with fana fi zat, where the zat, the one exists, and this is just a mirror, a droplet, a reflection happening through me. And gently, gently, as you start accepting that, instead of becoming a bitter battle, it starts becoming a sweet, sweet, a sweet dance, if you may. And in that, in all of these dissolving happening, it's almost like the vapor up and become a raindrop, and that raindrop has become a snowflake. And the snowflake it's physical, right? But when it lands and you take it into the palm of your hand, or it lands into water, it dissolves, 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 and there's no snowflake, there's no drop left. And a similar kind of thing starts to happening with your sense of I, and the I no longer you're still there. It doesn't erase you. You're still here. Your unique self is still here, but there's no longer a grip or a trying to prove it happening anymore. And there's therefore a more ease in the way you go with the waves of your life. That's how I kind of see it and understand it. So instead of in the beginning, I used to really get caught up in all of these stations and keep checking myself. Where do I fit? Where am I now? No, they're all happening all together simultaneously. And there is a process, but it's like a spiraling process. So it's always constantly in your everyday, with drinking a cup of water to, I don't know, giving water to the garden, or, take it to whatever expansiveness as you like, or bring it down to any little minute detail as you like. It's all happening all the time. And I think coming back to the sheikhs and being fana in the sheikh, annihilating in the sheikh, I think there really was a time in when there was true masters who were integrated and complete human beings, in which then you could almost like you know, connecting to them, that was like your Wi-Fi, right? By connecting to them, losing yourself in them, you actually found your true self. Because they weren't there to erase you as a being. They were there to help you to erase your idea of who you thought you are, to come to the truth of who you are. But I think we've no longer have those kind of complete human beings. Well, I'm sure they exist, of course they do, but it's so rare now that that makes it real hard for us common folk. So we have to come up with new ways in which Noor and Mushtaha are opening up for us, come into new ways of looking at the same formula, but applying it in a different way. Maybe taking out that share component, teacher master component, because it's slack on that one to put all that burden on them. And it's slack on you to have to be fighting with yourself in order to please this person who is just another person like you, and they've got their own stuff happening. So it's kind of just taking that burden off everybody and recognizing that we're all together. The ship is sinking, but if we can just wake up and prepare well enough, then hopefully we'll be integrally aligned enough to help us float once, once the going gets tough. That's how I'm feeling and I'm understanding of it. And I look at people like, for instance, Yunus Emre, who had Tapduk Emre, his master, and he went through that annihilating in the Sheikh to become who he became. And Rumi, he had Shams Tabrizi, like they need, but we don't have that luxury. I think that was luxury for our time. We don't have that. And you can find are talking the talk. And as soon as you try to join to them, you realize they're not walking their talk. And it's so hurtful and painful then because you're disappointed in another and you're disappointed in yourself. So you're still stuck in the duality. Whereas the whole purpose was to kind of dissolve from the duality into the oneness of being, making it okay here and making it okay for everyone else also to be in their own unique path in their oneness. Yeah.
Thank you, Anne. Lots of good thoughts, lots of good sharing. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was so helpful.
I just want to read Khalil's quickly and then Ian, you can chime in. So Khalil was saying, I can help Ilmar out by comparing it to musicianship. Number one, stage one. You learn the notes to
Rachmaninoff.
Rachmaninoff's Third Piano Concerto. Stage two. You practice your ass off for 10,000 hours learning to perform the Rock 3. Stage 3. You can play the Rock 3 exactly like Sergei Rachmaninoff. Stage 4. You can perform the Rock 3 not only better than Rachmaninoff, but you can compose even better pieces of your own genius.
That's
Fair
not bad. We should probably steal that.
enough. All right. Thank you, Khalil. How about you, Ian?
Well, I originally put my hand up because I was going to say that I can relate to Ilmar's, let's say, skepticism of models. And yet at the same time, I recognize that without models, we wouldn't have any language at all to talk about anything. So
Yeah.
there's this kind of duality associated with that. I loved what Eminem was saying. And some of that, specifically when she mentioned about the spirals and all of the stages potentially happening at the same time. I think am I capturing that right, Em? Yeah.
Yeah.
I found that to be very useful because one of the things I had been originally going to comment was that in my own experience, it's hard to see that things only happen in one part of this sequence.
Hmm.
Um, and finally, there was one thing that I thought might be interesting to mention, which is last week there was a small portion of the talk that focused on identification. And one of the things that happened to me afterwards, I think it was probably the next day, is that I found that there were some three very specific things. I'm not sure quite how to describe them, maybe drives, um, interests that I was able to disidentify from. And I found that to be very interesting because it was a disidentification in I think in a slightly different way than I'd ever experienced it before. I was kind of able to look at these things and see, oh, that's one of my robots working. And I haven't always been able to hold that all week for each of them, but I'm able to get back to that and detach and see that happening. And I found that to be, how to say it? I don't think this captures it at all. I was going to say a very pleasant experience. Um, so, I mean, to me, getting these little gems as a result of these talks is one of the reasons that keeps me coming back. So, and I'm sure that there will be more coming out of this one.
Thank you, Ian. Well, thank you for teaching the last third of the class, guys. Much appreciated. What are your thoughts, Mushtak?
Thoughts?
What's that?
I said, thoughts?
Yeah. You
What
got
thought?
any left? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because we run into this all the time. People say, show me the truth without words. I can show you all day, but if you don't have it in you, you won't hear it. You won't see it. It won't be there for you. So we work with models because models can at least walk around the truth pointing at it, and then maybe you can find it. And that's sort of my bottom line on this.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, all I have is a pair of sandals on my head.
Yeah.
You look good in those sandals, man.
Yeah.
You're going to
Very
have to,
well.
It's an
you
old Zen thing. I think it was Muhmin, a great Zen master. Somebody came up to him and said, does a dog have Buddha nature? And he said, Mu, which is a negation that is not no. And then he took off his sandals, put it on his head, and walked out of the room.
I was familiar with the question, but I didn't ha have a recollection of the sandals bit.
Yeah, and I may be putting two different things together because Zen is not my main area of study. Um, Khalil, where are you? Do you remember that story? Am I getting it right?
I'm lost in trying to also compare what you just said about words. I mean, I'm immersed in Wittgenstein, and actually Wittgenstein and Zen. I do a lot of Wittgenstein Zen comparisons. So, in that particular regard of words, I think about those magic eye paintings, right? I mean, on the one hand, you can tell people a lot of words about the theory behind. I mean, it's not a painting; it's a magic eye photo that they take with a special photograph, so that it looks like complete chaos. So you can explain how optically the scientists made this magic eye photo. And you could even do the second stage and tell the person how to practice focusing their eyes so that they could see the 3D image within this photo. But ultimately, it's up to the student to understand the theory, do the practice, and eventually do the seeing. There's no way I can see this 3D image for you. I
Hmm.
can only tell you the words of the theory about it.
Yeah, and that's what we run into all the time. I didn't learn that until Salvador Dali. There's a Dali museum in Florida, and in it is a huge room. And in the room, there's a huge painting. And as you walk through the door into the room, you see the painting, and it's one scene. You walk down the stairs and get a little bit closer, the scene totally changes. It is a completely different picture than it was. And if you get even closer, it's a completely different picture than that. And it's all of those at once. And you can talk about it all day long, but until you experience it, it's just words.
And Wittgenstein used the image of kicking the ladder out from under you once you use it. So if you think of these four stages as a kind of ladder of divine ascent, that's how Wittgenstein was using the Tractatus. But either way, if you use these words to get to an ineffable wordless point, you kick the ladder away and you no longer use it. You know, it's that old finger pointing to the moon
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, if you kick the ladder away and you're floating, you got it. If you hit the ground, that wasn't it. James makes an interesting observation here. Did you get that one, Noor?
James says language can inspire direct inquiry and disrupt previous, quote, certainties, unquote. Or it can just tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah. Language is always the model, not the experience. And we can say the map is not the territory over and over again, and people won't get it until you say the menu is not the meal. If you think differently, eat the menu and see how nurtured you are from it. So if you're in certain restaurants, the menu might be more healthy than the meal.
Oof.
James,
Um, I think the question of language is important and delicate because you can throw language at people that will inspire them to relax their previous obsessive interpretations and try and engage a more open awareness. But that same language falling on different ears might give them a kind of nihilistic gloom and doom. I mean, some people will take hope from mystical language. People will take despair from it. It's almost like language has a physiological or psychophysiological consequence. Is that fair?
yeah,
Then the types of language to the type of person is important if you're trying to, help them see their freedom.
Yeah. And that's one of the hardest
Mm.
constructs. We were talking about, the annihilation of constructs. That's one of the hardest ones to reset, to challenge, to undo, is the way that we respond unconsciously towards before we even realize we're thinking a certain way about the meaning of a word.
Um, Looking back in accounts I've read of the 60s and 70s, some people used the translation of Zen into European terms as a kind of nihilism.
Hmm.
And also in the more modern, like non-duality bros, you've got the resurrection of 19th century reductionist materialism and grim determinism masquerading as insight. Yeah. So language must be a very specific, skillful means.
That's a good way to put it, James.
Mm.
Yes, Osama.
The the way that I understood, I hope I understood Ilmar's point was similar to maybe Krishnamurti's inquiry, where words, model, right, that are being used, yet the presence of which the words and the objective thing that we're all looking at together, an experience is collectively shared within the words, within the model, within whatever is happening. Still words are there, still language is there, but yet there is a quality of presence of which the model is demonstrated rather than talked about. At least that's how I understood what Elmar was pointing at, which is quite different. And I guess this is what the different lectures, I guess, would do, would suit different people maybe, or different styles.
Yeah.
But there is something about experiencing, let's say, these stages, quote unquote, together. Like, what would that even look like? What would it be to collectively investigate annihilation of rules or ahkam or conditioning? Like, as somewhat of a collective contemplation slash meditation, where we're all not only, I mean, sure, it's or even that is going to be a pointer at whatever the real work is, um, but the shared presence that is required to walk through that is something that would give each word its proper due, I believe. I think that's how I understood what Elmar was pointing at least, or maybe I might have projected that on what he was saying. Um, but yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's very much what I was trying to point at. But the point that you and James are both raising, I guess what that implies to me is that there's something about a community that's important. That because a community maybe interprets those words in a similar way, whereas for a different community, those same words might completely point to something completely different, you know. And both, I take it from what I gather from what I hear about the Sufi tradition, but also certainly in the Zen tradition, the Sangha, the community, is a very important aspect. One that I must confess I don't participate in much myself. I tend to be a loner, you know. So this is something but I can see the value of it. And one of those values is probably because there is this shared, uh, well, there's a possibility of words pointing at the same thing, you know. Whereas, you know, for a diverse group of people, it must be very, very difficult, almost impossible for words to point to the same thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah. And this is why when we look at the second fana, the bottom line is here is this exercise. Do it. And that ends all questions to a, and you see that whether it's Zen or Sufism or Hinduism, there's always, here's an exercise. Do it until you find the answer.
Hmm.
And sometimes the answer might be this exercise is bullshit, but with any luck, it'll be an exercise that works for you.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, one of the things that Zen does emphasize is that they, at least then they claim to start at the, in a sense, at near the end point, right? To give you this, Kensho wild experience, right? And then it's a matter of sort of incorporating it into your life. And whereas on the gradual approach, it's a matter of, getting your life straightened out and then eventually getting some kind of opening. Like I don't want to speak of it as an event because it's not an event, but but there's, I guess, also two different approaches. One is you try to get the person, you blow their minds, and then you build the structure underneath it, Whereas on the other approach, you dismantle the structure until that mind gets blown. I guess that might be one way of putting it. But those are two quite different approaches. Uh, anyway, that's all I can say.
Thank you, Umar and Osama. Um, Khalil says, I don't know of a single authentic wisdom path that does not insist on integrating the discursive content of the teaching, i.e., the words, with the direct guidance of the teacher, who insightfully, with the direct guidance of the teacher, who has, do you wanna speak to that?
Yeah, I don't know of a single wisdom path that doesn't use words, but it doesn't just throw words out to the students. It uses the words as like a three-legged stool. There's also the insightful guidance of the teacher, and the most important thing is a holistic ecology of practices that allow the students to embody and enact the words. So it's
Mm,
not just the words that's the teaching. If you just had words being the teaching, that would just be a one-legged stool. The words are integrated holistically with the teaching and the practice.
mhm, definitely. James.
This was actually responding to Ilmar's last point. My third-hand academic impression is that a lot of wisdom traditions, even if they seem to be a very direct path, start at the highest, they nevertheless sit on a culture that kind of prepares the student for that. Um, I was struck by, once again, Western commentators saying that in Japan, traditional Japanese culture often prepares everyday citizens with the quality and capacity of the hara. And that capacity was already assumed to be there just in the culture, and you needed that as a foundation for Zen practice. Otherwise, your Zen would start off up in the head. Um, is that a possibility that a lot of the apparent direct paths are able to be direct because they assume, or at least in the past, that the culture has very much cultivated the potential student to then be able to simply by being the culture? Could there not be some truth in that, or was it? I don't know. That's my
Interesting idea.
third-hand impression. That's it.
Mm,
Yeah, interesting idea. I mean, it certainly seems like in, except in these sort of spontaneous cases, which like sounds like you had when you were very young, uh, there is a sort of, there are some upayas, some skillful means which are being used, and maybe they depend upon, certain things being present already, whether it is hara or something else. But yeah, so there's a lot to be said for what you're saying there, James. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have to say, that spontaneous state that I've talked about is not any of these four phases. I didn't really realize that until um, I actually got to experience the fanas to realize, oh, that was a how, that was a state that showed me some things, but it was not the annihilation of any of those things.
yeah, I think from my own experiences, it's informative, possibly, depending on how we move forward, having experienced that state. But it is not an end to itself somehow. Sometimes it's just like, wow, another aspect of existence that I got to feel into for a moment.
That's certainly what seems to what some of the uh, drug states seem to create very often, LSD and stuff like that. I mean, it
Yeah,
opens
they
up to
created
some wild
states.
experiences, but they kind of float loose. I mean, they're not like they're, you know,
Yeah.
yeah.
Halil mentions Ken Wilber distinguishes between states and stages. Yeah, and in
Yeah,
Sufism, the tradition is that you distinguish between states and stations.
yeah. Hal and Makam.
Yes. Any other last thoughts? Heidi, how are you doing?
Well, I'm trying to follow along, I guess.
Yeah, this is complicated.
I'm not
I'm
sure as you go through these stages of self-annihilation, then how do you know what stage you're at if you're annihilating the self that might be able to
to know, to
indicate that?
recognize. Well, ultimately, the stages are irrelevant. Let's remember that too. They don't matter. They don't matter as concepts. As we've been talking about this evening, they're really just ways to, hmm, they are waypointers in a process of hmm, distinguishing between truth and untruth. The truth is there the whole time. I don't want to go out into, nonsense, non-dual territory, but in a way, this is the there is no spoon stuff. But it does take some, flopping around in order to be able to recognize that. Hmm. As Hillel says, because only the false self, the nafs, gets annihilated, not the true self, which, in this, which we can call Allah. Ah, it has been a long day.
Yes, you've been working all day.
I have been.
She's been working all day. I've been mostly goofing off,
Working hard at goofing off.
working hard at goofing off.
Yeah. So with that, that's it for me. My brain is
Yeah.
toast. What do you think, Mushtaq?
I think that I'm hungry and I want to make dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's switch views. Here we are. All manner of wonderful people.
Yeah. I just want to, M has one last thought. I will
Oh,
share it and we can wrap things up. M points out, they're not really 5 steps. They're kind of formulas. They are names that can help us make sense of the senseless. It's nonsense stuff. once one becomes a seeker, they start happening. It's almost like the heat that cooks one into ripeness, hopefully not burning nor leaving one unripe. So it's there's a flow to this. There isn't really a sense of concrete, blocked out, chunked out steps forward into realizing that there is no spoon. All right. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you for your, like I said, your contributions to the conversation mean everything. And thank you so much for that today, everyone. And hopefully folks can continue in the chat if they wish to. But we can wave to each other, wave to everybody who's watching on the replay, and God willing, we will see you next week. Thanks again.